Good evening, and welcome to The Storied Past, Building a Lead Investigator in a Mystery by Rebecca Salamonson. As lead investigators doing what they do best, the main characters of mystery novels tend to have a storied past, something in their childhood or earlier existence that gives them a lens through which they see their world and the case that they are working on. These past experiences cause blind spots in their investigations that make them miss things and or make mistakes. Or it makes them great at their job by helping them being hyper aware and observant of every detail. In either case, their past leads to them becoming personally involved in the case they are working on in a way that they haven't been with their past cases. From Eve in Naked in Death to Easy in Devil in a Blue Dress, the characters we've studied this semester each have a past that colors their present. For this lecture, I'm going to examine how authors D.A. Mishani and Tana French build their main characters in the novels, respectively, The Missing File and In the Woods, by giving them their storied pasts. It is important for authors to build in a backstory for their main character so that something from the character's past informs how they see the present and their current case. This serves a number of purposes. First of all, it makes the case become more personal to them, as they see it through the somewhat clouded lens of their past. It also creates blind spots for them that they must overcome in order to solve the case, or not. Their backstory does not have to be filled with tragedy or loss, although it doesn't hurt if it is. It just has to be something that gives them a lens through which they see their current case. Abraham, the main character in The Missing File by D.A. Mishani, has lived in the same quiet suburb of Tel Aviv his whole life, and nothing much criminal has happened there. He sees life through the lens of nothing ever happens around here, and it causes his blind spots. His first mistake is telling Hannah Sharabi that he's sure her missing son is fine and will turn up soon. In the first chapter, speaking with Hannah, he says, "We don't have crimes like that. We don't have serial killers. We don't have kidnappings. And there aren't many rapists out there attacking women on the street." He doesn't take her concerns seriously, and he sends her home to wait for her son to show up. Another part of Abraham's past that affects his current life is his relationship with his parents. He seems to have ambivalent feelings toward them. He is unenthusiastic when he receives a flower arrangement from them for his birthday. He passes by the apartment they still live in and thinks momentarily about them. And he doesn't particularly enjoy visiting them. We find out on page 55 why his relationship with his parents is strained and distant in the following passage. Quote, "He became a detective when he returned home from school as a child and tried to read the telltale signs of his mother's moods. He developed an extreme sensitivity to signs and signals, facial expressions, changes in her tone of voice. While still on the stairs, he'd try to smell what she had cooked that day to know if the meal would end in a beating. If she had made something he liked, the meal would generally pass quietly. But if she had made something he couldn't stomach, for reasons he never understood, it would end badly. The smell of stuffed cabbage in the stairwell, for example, was a sure sign that a severe beating was in store." He seems to have a healthier relationship with his father, but his father is not quite the same man that he used to be after suffering a stroke. Abraham sees his current cases through the lens of a man who suffered abuse at the hands of his mother and lost the relationship with his father. While it's never expressly stated, I believe that if Abraham had not suffered abuse from his mother as a child, he might have taken the concerns of a worried mother more seriously and not made the initial mistakes he made in the investigation. The character of Rob in the novel In the Woods by Tana French has a much more violent and mysterious past to contend with. We learn very early on in the novel that when he was a child, he was out playing with his two best friends when the two of them disappeared. Rob was found clinging to a tree with blood pooling in his shoes. His friends were never found, and the truth of that ordeal has never been discovered, as Rob does not remember a single thing about it. This incident overshadows the case of the murdered child, Katie Devlin, who was found in the same area where Rob's incident took place. While he continues to tell his partner Cassie that he is fine, it soon becomes clear that he is not. He begins to make mistakes and lose control of himself. He acknowledges his personal connection with the case, and the strangeness of it landing on his and his partner's shoulders in a passage on page 91. Quote, I am not superstitious, but if the call had come in a few minutes earlier or later, after all, or if Cassie and I had not just discovered worms, or if we had wanted a smoke, this case would have gone to Costello or someone, never to us. And it seemed so impossible that so powerful and heady a thing could be coincidence. I had a sense of things stirring, rearranging themselves in some imperceptible but crucial way. Tiny, unseen cogs beginning to shift. As he continues to investigate the crime, he struggles with memories from his childhood and the lack of memories from his ordeal. At one point, he decides to spend a night in the woods in an effort to remember what happened to him. After his night in the woods, he acknowledges that his past is getting to him and interfering in the case. Quote, I think it is important to reiterate that no matter what I may have claimed at the time, for most of Operation Vessel, I was not in anything resembling a normal frame of mind. End quote. A few paragraphs later, he reflects, quote, I could not believe that I had been stupid enough to ignore everything I knew and prance gaily back into that wood. I had never been so angry with myself in my life. It was only much later, when the case was over and the dust had settled on the debris, when I prodded cautiously at the edges of my memory and came up empty. It was only then that I began to think this might not be deliverance, but a vast missed chance, an irrevocable and devastating loss. End quote. Rob's undealt with past clouds his judgment and leads him in wrong directions with his present case. The cases that the lead characters investigate in these novels become very personal to them. The case isn't just their average case. Something about it makes the case they must work on, even against their better judgment, or the judgment of their partners and or superiors. And this personal connection usually has to do with their backstory. Abraham becomes personally involved in the case when Hannah returns to the station the day after reporting her son missing. He notes how she looks, dressed in the same clothes as the day before, cell phone clutched in her hand, a shabby purse hanging off her shoulders. And then the narration says, quote, the pain he felt on seeing her took him by surprise. Ofer hadn't returned. End quote. That is the moment that it becomes personal for him. He realizes his failure from the night before, not taking Hannah seriously, and he decides he must act. Later, when he is speaking to Alana, his superior, and the other investigators on the case, Shrapstein and Eliyahu, Abraham starts to feel defeated by the adept investigation skills of his colleagues. The mood in Alana's office had taken on the energy and the decisiveness that typified the start of an investigation. With each member of the team assigned certain tasks, and each one eager to fulfill them, and only Abraham feeling a sense of profound weariness, an overall depletion of body and soul that would usually come at the end of a case or on vacation, he thought he should ask Alana to take him off the case and hoped she could sense his waning spirits. End quote. But he soon has a change of heart, and when he's alone with Alana in her office, he tells her, quote, Alana, please don't take this case away from me. Just half an hour ago, I wanted to ask you to hand it over to someone else, but we both know it would kill me. This is my investigation. It has been mine from the moment Ofer's mother walked into the station, and it has to stay mine until I find the boy and bring him home. End quote. As he gets deeper into the investigation, he becomes more and more invested in the missing boy's life. Going back to the storied past, I believe Abraham's attachment to the case comes because, as he gets to know more about Ofer, he sees himself in the missing boy and feels a need to reunite him with his family. Rob's personal connection with the case of the murdered child comes from his storied past as well. He lived through the disappearance and presumed murder of his two best childhood friends, and here he is investigating the murder of a child. In Rob's case, his personal involvement leads to his downfall, as he gets too close to the victim's sister, Rosalind, and gets taken in by her. He also cannot separate his experience from the case. Memories from his childhood are constantly barging into the investigation. For example, he and Cassie poke around his case in case it is related to the new one somehow. They go to visit the mother of Jamie, one of Rob's missing friends, and as they are talking to her, he gets suddenly upset. Quote, the wave of pure outrage blindsided me. I shouldn't be here, I thought. This is utterly fucked up. I should have been sitting in a garden down the road, barefoot with a drink in my hand. swapping the day's work stories with Peter and Jamie. I had never thought of this before, and it almost knocked me over. All the things we should have had. End quote. In conclusion, the main characters in mystery novels carry around secrets from their past that influence how they see their present, which in turn affects the investigation they are working on. Sometimes it works to their advantage and sometimes to their disadvantage. It is important for a writer to build in these backstories to add depth and richness to the characters, the crimes they're investigating, and the mistakes they make because of their pasts. The backstory is a large part of creating the three-dimensional main character. My questions for you are, number 1, what other character traits do you see mystery characters having in common? And number 2, do you agree that these characters need the storied past in order to be a well-rounded character? And why or why not? Thank you for listening.